colors, but I
Right.
also love the beach, you know.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
okay, well, we're starting. Yeah.
Excellent.
I spoke to Vishnu. He said he'll be in 1 second. He's signing on now.
Okay. All right.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Poetry and Prose. It is the 1st of September, 2024, and this is our open mic and discussion meeting. We are celebrating Independence Day, was yesterday, the 31st of August, in Trinidad, and that's our theme for this meeting. We're going to kick off. Just 1 minute. I feel like I'm hearing feedback. I don't know if anyone else is hearing it. Great. Vishnu's joining us now. Lovely. Okay, we're going to start off the meeting with Cynthia Birch. She will be reading her own piece, Reflection on the Independence of Trinidad and Tobago, the 31st of August, 1962 to the 31st of August, 2024. Cynthia, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. The first thing that I need to do is to acknowledge the extensive help of a number of persons who assisted me in supplying material over this 62-year period, and I'll do that first. Professor Clyde H. Phillip and his consultant administrative manager, Mrs. Udane Garcia, they provided a lot of information from a document. And also I had input from Professor Emerita Bridget Brereton of UWI, and also from Professor Selwyn Cudjoe and a few others. So I made sure that I have acknowledged their help, because I would not have been able to provide this sort of information without their assistance. So, reflections on the independence of Trinidad and Tobago, 31st August 1962 to 31st August 2024. I was I was in Trinidad for the start, and I've been back in Trinidad for 57 years. So I thought that I could present my reactions and thoughts on this anniversary, the 62nd anniversary. Last year I mentioned that my mother brought my sister and myself to Trinidad to be here, because she had been attending many of Eric Williams's meetings at Woodford Square in those days, 1956 and onward. And so she wanted to be sure that we were part of this process of leaving colonialism and coming out on our own. So that was August 1962, and I had just turned 21. Now I'm 83 and have been living continuously in Trinidad for the past 57 years. So I have been privy to the developments, some good, others less favorable, over this period. So I am most concerned that our country needs dexterous guidance, certainly not government by VAPs. Well, I just did my acknowledgements, so I can omit that little bit. But the document from which a lot of this information has come, this is via Professor Clyde H. Phillip and Mrs. Garcia, A Nation's Journey, a Historical Overview of Trinidad and Tobago, 1962 to 2022. So they put all this information at my disposal, which was absolutely wonderful of them. So 1962 to 1972, the dawn of independence. Trinidad and Tobago, a twin island nation in the Caribbean, emerged from British colonial rule and gained independence on August 31st, 1962. The early years of independence were marked by a focus on nation building and economic development. Now, my little personal note there, 1962 to 1972, in that period, well, I went in 68. I was an undergraduate at UWI St. Augustine. And so I was there in 1970 when the Black Power Revolution erupted, and I was preoccupied with my own survival. I was being supported through my studies, for which I'm eternally grateful. So I did not at the time really focus on the wider implications of this movement, even though here and there I did attend a little meeting in St. Augustine, somebody's home, all part of the Black Power movement. A little note that I hadn't written in is that when I went through UV, I was able to buy sometimes perhaps one book out of three. That's the way I managed to scrape through UV, by being helped, just the way I've been helped with this article, by being helped. And I managed to get through. So from the 1972 now to 1982, economic challenges and political stability. The 1970s and early 1980s were a period of economic challenges for Trinidad and Tobago. The decline in global oil prices and the country's dependence on this commodity led to economic instability. Despite these challenges, the country maintained political stability and continued to make progress in various areas, including education and healthcare. 1973 marked the start of the oil boom. Given the challenges in the Middle East, the price of oil rose significantly. Trinidad and Tobago moved away from a food agricultural society to an industrial society. The country's rich oil and gas resources played a significant role in its economic growth during this period. In 1981, we see the emergence of the ONR. The advances in education at this time, this is another personal note, had a direct impact on my life since, as I've just told you, you now know the way I actually scraped through UWI. So immediately after my graduation from UV, graduate teachers' salaries were increased just in time for me to go to work. The salaries had been at something like $479 a month in those days. We're talking 1970, 1971, I graduated. And the salaries went to 600 and something, by approximately $150. Now that might seem like a paltry increase, but in 1971, when I emerged from UWI, that was a princely sum. So next I go to the next decade, 1982 to 1992, a decade of transition. In the 1980s and early 1990s, sorry, not in, the 1980s and early 1990s witnessed a period of political and economic transition. The National Alliance for Reconstruction, NAR, emerged as a viable opposition party, challenging the PNM's dominance. The country also experienced a shift toward greater economic diversification, exploring opportunities in sectors beyond oil and gas. In this period, I was teaching English and French, scripture, and comparative religion, and was taken up with my job, so that the 28th July 1990 attempt to take over the country, the attempted coup d'etat led by Abdul Bakr and his Jamaat al-Muslimin, took me quite by surprise, and I suppose a lot of other persons too. This violent insurrection resulted in the loss of lives and significant damage to property. The government, with the assistance of the US military, eventually suppressed the uprising, but the incident left a lasting impact on the country's security and political landscape. Now, economic recovery and political change marks the next decade to some extent. 1992 to 2002. The early 2000s marked a period of economic recovery for Trinidad and Tobago. Rising oil prices and prudent economic management contributed to the country's resurgence. Politically, the PNM regained power and efforts were made to address social and economic disparities. 1999, the rapid and unprecedented growth of the Point Lisas Development Estate led to the establishment of the first technological university in the region, the Trinidad and Tobago Institute of Technology. Moving along now to the period 2002 to 2012, a growing drug problem. By this time, I had retired from the teaching service of TNT and was employed in tourism at the airport. And in this period, an alarming increase in illegal acquisition of drugs and guns began. A significant challenge facing Trinidad and Tobago during this period was this illegal drug trafficking and gun violence. The country became a transit point for illicit drugs, leading to increased crime rates and social instability. The government implemented various measures to combat this problem, including law enforcement initiatives and community-based programs. The year 2010 saw the installation of the first female Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamla Persad-Bissessar. 2010 to 2015 marked the rapid transformation of the education and training system under the leadership of Fazal Karim. 2012 to 2022, a decade of development and challenges. The 2010s witnessed continued economic growth in Trinidad and Tobago, driven by the oil and gas sector. However, the country also faced challenges such as high unemployment rates, income inequality, and environmental concerns. Efforts were made to promote sustainable development and improve the quality of life for all citizens. 2022 to 2024. This is my input now. In this short period, there has been a greater upsurge in lawlessness, gang warfare, violent home invasions, blatant attacks on the most vulnerable, etc. Concomitant with that is this even greater move to overturn memories and vestiges of the past. Now, it seems as though I am linking two totally disparate elements. However, the common thing is that it's, these sundry thoughts and developments are really contributing to a lot of uncertainty in the society. So, Professor Selwyn Kajo, one of the persons who contributed to what I have produced here, he said, struggling through the whole period, there is still a need to find a unifying ideology that will keep us together. The challenges of constructing a multiracial society still remain. The discussion around what symbol to place on our national coat of arms to replace the names of Columbus's ships tends to highlight this challenge of multiracial unity. And my own summation, as Trinidad and Tobago celebrates its 62nd Independence Day, it is important to reflect on the nation's journey and the challenges and triumphs it has faced. The country has made significant strides in its development. But there is still work to be done to address the ongoing challenges and ensure a brighter future for its people, for our people. So that's the end of my presentation. I have my acknowledgements listed after this, but I've already told you the persons who contributed significantly to what I was able to put together, the different pointers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any comments? Please unmute. I muted everyone at the beginning, so if you want to comment, kindly unmute.
Just before people say anything, if they are going to, just remember I'm not a historian, so I can only talk about my personal input.
Well, Cynthia, as somebody in the diaspora, and I left Trinidad in 1970, so your report has really been helpful to me to catch up with those years between then and now. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome, and anyone who would like me to forward it to them, as in a sort of fragmented form as it is. But the outline does give you a sort of sense of how things were going in this period. So if you would like it, I can just shoot it to you. Just let me know who wants it. Thank
It's
you.
very well done. Very well
I
done.
can certainly put this on our blog if you'd like.
So
Yes, Cynthia, I think you did a wonderful job there as a most comprehensive thing because I don't know, but I would suggest that you send it to all the politicians because when they are speaking and when they are talking about independence and what is happening in the country, it seems as if they do not know all these things that you know and that you tell us and that all of us know, and some of us afraid to voice. But
Motilal, I thought you were
oh,
my
thank
friend.
you, because
I
I think it was,
quietly in the corner here.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you.
I just one other thing too, when you talk about TTIT, I had forgotten that
Yes,
name because I just started TTIT with Pascal Karim and all that. I was in the energy industry and
yes.
I maybe I was one of the first set of people to go to TTIT to do
Lovely.
courses and all that. And I had completely forgotten the name because we're talking about the University of Trinidad and Tobago. That's just by the way. But
Yes.
as I say, I think you should send it to all the politicians. So when they're talking, when they read, you will realize that
Let,
what
let,
they not
let me
remembering.
just
Thank
let
you
me
again.
just point out that the people who allowed me to use their material, it is already in the public domain. They can face the politicians. I staying in my corner because you know what's going on now. Pow pow pow. So that is already in the public domain. So if anybody needs to find it, I'm sure I could find out, where it's available and all that. Not a problem.
But
Thank you.
one of the interesting things that I realize is that for 62 years for independence, this country is still in a state of adolescence. That's a very young country.
Yes, it
So
is.
it doesn't surprise me that we are going through all of these really horrible changes, with education and gangs and warfare and crime and so on. We'll get through it, but it's going to definitely need a concerted effort,
Yeah.
uh, far more so than just changing our emblem to pan from three steps.
Lot
As a friend of mine said, in who has a flooded area in the south, she said, they can spend millions to change the emblem, but they don't spend a damn cent just on clogging the drains. And I said, that's very true. They need to find the priorities.
Mhm. Yeah. Which is what I said in my last little paragraph, that there are many things that are coming. I mean, concentrating on this coat of arms right now, when you've got gangs running amok all over the place, I just think that's not prioritizing.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're doing it because the US went and took down a lot of their monuments So, you know, Trinidad just, we have to follow. And
Monkey
then
see,
the
monkey
UK
do.
had that discussion as well. So here we come. I honestly think it's a waste of money as well. I think we do need to instill some national pride and put attention on the youths that's coming up.
Yeah.
That's where I feel it should go
Very
personally.
true, Gersha. And of course, what they're trying to do is erase history, and you can't do that.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Okay, can I make some comments?
Jump on in,
Well,
Krishna. Well,
right. Cynthia, yeah, you took the approach of a decade by decade in your reflections, and you were able to identify some crucial things. I just want to amplify on some of these, or just reiterate some of the things you mentioned. You say that we got independence from the British. Is a British colonial rule. And we take that term colonial, how we try to get away from colonialism. And I don't know if what the Prime Minister is talking about with the steel pan is just an extension of that decolonization process that we are into. As Harold just said, we are still young. Good. 62 years is young. So that's one, the question of colonialism, the process of decolonization, and where we are at now, how independent are we, can we say, culturally, educationally, economically, and so on. That's one. The second thing is, well, I notice you kind of steered clear of the politicians, as you mentioned, and you are a bit wary of that. But from 56 to 86, 1956 to 1986, we had the rule of the PNM. And the strong, towering figure in that was Dr. Eric Williams, who passed away in 1981, right? So his presence, his contribution, his influence, I think we need to consider that. How much of Dr. Williams still persists today in our lives. A very powerful person, strong academic, and who was able to hold rules. But in addition to that, you mentioned 1970. So we got independence in 62. 8 years later, this nation was rocked by protests and so on. And protests by who? Not white people. They were your own people. So the question is, what it is you wanted? We wanted to be independent. You have these people ruling, and now we have people taking to the streets for Black Power. Well, Black Power we know was sweeping America and the region and our country as well, right? There was Black consciousness. Black is beautiful. Good. And then in 1990, you mentioned, so we had 1970, and then 20 years later, 1990, and I want to say 20 years later, something else. So somebody made the comment, it's like every 20 years we have some kind of upheaval in this country. Yeah. 70 was the Black Power. 1990, we know what happened. The Muslims stormed parliament, and they all but declared the state as an Islamic state. I thought we were going to be an Islamic state, but that didn't happen. He had other ideas. He said he just wanted to change up some things, right? And then in 2010 we had the People's Partnership coming into power, and the first female prime minister. Before that, we had the first 1995, the first Indian or Indo-Trinidadian, however you want to say it, or Hindu prime minister in Basdev Pandey. So you had Pandey in 95, and then you had Kamala in 2010, right? And so those are the things. And also you mentioned in your decade by decade approach, the drugs and the guns, and how we became this transit place between South America and North America. Good. So guns, drugs
So,
coming in the country, and the effect that had on our young, the effect that had on our young men, so many of them who died because of this, so many of them who got rich quickly, and they lived quickly, and they passed on. And we still have that scourge of the crime situation. When they say, well, they died because of drugs. You know, they were killed because of drugs. There's a turf war going on. So that was good that you cited that to the drugs, the guns coming into this country. And of course, well, I had to smile with your conclusion because I know where you're coming from. And I know some people are for it, some people are against this kind of thing.
yeah.
Right? So that's my responses to some of the things you say. I like the decade by decade approach, but you highlighted some of the things that we need to consider if we saying we're going to celebrate independence, which we did yesterday, by opening all places open, most of them. Life went on as usual. How independent are we? To me is the question I would ask. How independent are we? And then how much of celebration should we be involved in? As Harold said, we are quite young.
Yes.
Okay?
And where do we go from here?
Right. Above all, where do we go from?
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was lovely. That breaking it down into, looking at it more closely. Thanks so much, Krishna.
If I may, Cynthia,
But of course,
many of these decades would have been part of my life as well. And I remembered being in primary school, standard 5. I would have just done SEA when Eric Williams would have passed in 1981. So I would have done, well, what was called common entrance then
okay.
in 81. So my secondary school life would have started just after Eric Williams would have died. So I would have gone through that period of the NAR coming on the scene in 86. I would have lived through 1990 with the attempted coup. I would have seen the transition of many political parties during that period of time. And I think historically, our country has had what I would like to call a kind of yo-yo effect when it comes to politics. And often, by and large, our country is a two-party political country. I mean, other parties would have come up on the scene and what have you. But when it comes to the run of the mill and the politics, I think our country has demonstrated over the years that we are mainly a two-party political country. And so we would have, like Krishna, that decade by decade, I really welcome that. Because what you would have seen in every 10 years, you see different aspects of our country coming to the forefront. And yes, crime is on the political front burner. But I think besides that, we would have made some strides in our country. Educationally, if you look at the Black Power movement, for example, and I would have been a child then, one of the things that would have been at the forefront of it is the face of our country as a Caribbean nation. And I grew up in the days when the bank workers did not look like me. And I'm being very blunt with that. And oftentimes, so you would have had that issue as well, where we would have come out of our colonial masters, but yet at the same time, the persons who controlled the economics, still to an extent, seemed to be our colonial masters or descendants of the same. And therefore you would have had that Black Power movement, yes, sweeping the US, but what it was in the US was quite different for what it was for us in the Caribbean and for us as Trinidadians, particularly. So that our Black Power movement would have been whereby in the States you had the blacks looking for a voice, not being able to do so much. And when you look at it, you would realize that even in the 60s in the US, blacks really were not given, as we want to call it, a piece of the pie, the American pie, as you want to call it. As opposed to Trinidad, we would have actually made some greater strides because of the Caribbean basis of our nation. And a lot of it would have, so from then to now, I think that during my lifetime, I would have seen improvements. I would have seen, betterment. I would have seen a lot of things that often tend to be overlooked when we talk of us as a people moving forward in our space. And crime, I think, I am yet to see any government that have really taken that bull by the horn and done, something about it in any effective way. And I am hoping that as a people, we can arrest that negative situation that we have in our country. I don't know how best it can be, but I'm hoping that we do. But I think that you captured that 62-year period really well. And of course, you would have given kudos to those who would have given you, information and what have you. But I think that 62 years, when we look at it from 1962, when that Union Jack was taken down and the red, white, and black was hoisted to 2024, I think as a nation, we have come a great way.
Thank you, Alicia.
And with that too, I just had a friend, a lady I know here, who commented to me, well, I don't really think we don't have anything to celebrate. What are we celebrating? And something that Krishna just said too, I really think that, yes, we do have a lot of things that we need to fix here. One of them, particularly, I think, the education, especially young kids with reading and so on, to get them interested more in books. But I think we have so much to celebrate. We need to celebrate what is good and keep fixing what needs to be fixing. But I really think that we do have a lot to celebrate here. We really do.
I agree.
Any other comments before we move on? Okay, thank you, Cynthia, for that, for sharing your piece. It was quite interesting and right on theme. We're going to go ahead to Vishnu. Vishnu will be reading Letters 1 and 3 by Martin Carter. Vishnu, the floor is yours.
Martin Carter. Yeah, yes, Coach. Martin Carter.
Carter. Yeah, thanks.
Do you hear me now? I'm not seeing myself, but
we are seeing you and we are hearing you.
We can see you. I don't know.
Okay, I'm reading 2 letters from Martin Carter, and they are taken from his book, Poems of Succession. I'm reading letter 1 first. Yeah, letter 1, letter 2, and letter 3. To letter 1. This is what they do with me. Put me in prison, hide me away. Cut off the world, cut out the sun, darken the land, blacken the flower, stifle my breath and hope that I die. But I laugh at them. I laugh because I know they cannot kill me, nor kill my thoughts, nor murder what I write. I'm a man living among my people, proud as a tree. The axeman cannot tumble. So if my people live, I must live. And they will live. I tell you, they will live. But these, I laugh at them. I do not know what thoughts pass through their minds. Perhaps they do not know how to think at all. Tigers don't think, nor toads, nor rooting swine, but only man. Just listen and you know. In Kenya, today, they drink the blood of black women. In Malaya, the hero is hunted and shot like a dog. Here, they watch us and lick their tongues like beasts who crouch to prey upon some little child. But I tell you, like a tide from the heart of things, inexorably and inevitably, a day will come. If I do not live to see that day, my son will see it. If he does not see that day, his son will see it. And it will come circling the world like fire. It will come to this land and every land. And when it comes, I'll come alive again and laugh again and walk out of this prison. So that's Martin Carter's letter 1. And you may know Martin Carter was always imprisoned by the regime in Guyana for a lot of his ideas and thoughts and things. So actually he's like writing about himself. Without getting into the politics, he's writing about his feelings and what happened to people in Guyana at that time. And the second one I'm going to read is letter 3. I'm leaving out letter 2. It is not easy to go to sleep when the tramp of a soldier marches in your brain. You do not know whether to sleep or wake when a rifle crashes on the metal road. This is all they want me to hear. A soldier marching with a long black rifle. A guard commander lining up his squad. The stamp of feet upon the floors of sunset. The yawn of darkness swallowing up the world. It is not easy to go to sleep when the tramp of a soldier marches in your brain. You do not know whether to sleep or wake. When the long night comes and takes you in his arms. That's my contribution. Martin Carter, letter 1 and letter 2. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Vishnu. Any comments?
Just to say that my second dissertation at UWI was on Martin Carter. So thank you very much, Vishnu.
Yeah, I know. I did Carter at university also, and I think I liked him since then, and I continue to fit all kind of individuals. Talking about the Black Days or ideas. You've been feeling the people for movement like
Right.
people like Michael that movement to me forerunner to the Black with that. The kind of experience Michael has had in Trinidad and in Grenada.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Very powerful, Vishnu, and very well written, very well read indeed.
Definitely.
You know, he is one of our, I don't want to use the word colorful, but very impressive figures in the, in Guyana. In fact, I think he's considered one of the greatest poets of Guyana. And he had such an interesting life, attending school, then deciding not to go to university, joining the civil service, and doing a number of things, and then being, of course, imprisoned. And while imprisoned, I think history tells us he would have done a hunger strike for a month, along with some other detainees, because because of the injustices that were meted out. They were just being held. They were not being charged, and they were just there, And so, I think his letters are a very, very pertinent and relevant part to our history as a Caribbean region, So, very, very good pieces there, indeed.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Let's go.
Okay. If no other comments, we'll move along to Mutilal. Budu Singh Muti has a new piece for us today, and I
So,
think he's going to change it up just a bit. So, Mutilal, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Gushan. We have had some pretty heavy stuff. And so I just want to lighten up the mood a bit. And I also want to celebrate my independence by straying from the team independence and instead read a bit of my reflections. So here goes. House of the In-Laws. I am writing this from my hospital bed, where I am confined with some illness, some ill health, but I need to keep my spirits up. I've been treated very well by the nurses and staff as they tried to make me comfortable. When I was being prepared for admission, I was asked how I was feeling. I joked, I feel I am going to my mother-in-law's house. Well, if you are puzzled, let me explain. In Trinidad, especially in the Hindu community, sons-in-law or damads, especially when they are new, are treated with great reverence. In fact, during the wedding ceremony, mother-in-laws, father-in-laws, and brother-in-laws all bow down to him, symbolically wash his feet, and welcome him as if he is royalty. He receives many gifts, often a thick gold bracelet from his mother-in-law, the thinking being the mad kush to beti kush, which means if the son-in-law is happy, then the daughter is happy. After marriage, he still receives special treatment. When he comes to visit, the mother-in-law will go to any extent to make him happy. Hot food in Taria, Taria being the special brass plate used in pujas. I have heard my friend Kisun grumbled, as he, the father-in-law, is relegated to number 2, eating his lunch, often leftovers from breakfast, from a regular enamel plate. He, however, draws the line when asked to give up the master bedroom for the recently married couple. Let them stay in she old room, yeah? He insists. Traditionally, the damad gets a dowry, sometimes a large sum of money or even a piece of land, following a custom originated in India and continued here in Trinidad. Once the son-in-law arrives, the father-in-law becomes second class and totally irrelevant. His advice is no longer sought. The frugal father-in-law, often on a fixed pension, has to fork out huge sums of money to satisfy the new purchases that the damad son-in-law recommends. The traditional walls that were forever off-white now have to be painted in pastel colors, whatever that is. Suddenly, the fridge that has been serving faithfully for over 20 years has become too small. and there's need for another TV, smart, 60-inch if you please. And the son-in-law say he feel that the car is getting old. I wonder why there isn't a Hindu tradition to put the bahu, that is the daughter-in-law, on a pedestal similar to the damad. Does the mother-in-law make an effort to make her feel comfortable when she comes to a new home? Is she treated to her favorite meals and pampered? Or is she expected to suit the needs of the new household? The Hindu holy books celebrate the daughter-in-law. In the Ramayana, Sita is a heroine who is presented as equal to Lord Rama as she accompanies him in banishment. Savitri, by her knowledge of the scriptures and her cunning, bettered the Lord of Death Yama in debate and saves her husband and in-laws. One of the most profound attributes of Hinduism is the worship of God as feminine. There are many festivals such as Diwali, where Goddess Lakshmi is revered. The period of Navratri is dedicated to goddess worship, and the holy books often refer to the daughter-in-law as the Lakshmi of the house. Yet, in practice, we see the ill treatment of the daughter-in-law in our society. Even in the Indian soap operas on our television, this is prevalent. Hindu mothers-in-law need to understand that the Bahu, daughter-in-law, is not there to take away their sons. Here's an extract from a story from my book, Aji Aur Nani Kahani, that my grandmother told me about mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship. There was once a man and his wife who had an only son. They lived in a small village, and as was the custom at that time, they had arranged, while the son was still a boy, for him to be married to his mother's rich relative when he grew up. As the boy became a young man, he fell in love with another village girl. She had no parents and grew up with a brother who was very poor. His greedy mother was furious, but the boy wouldn't budge. The dowry was small, but the grasping mother-in-law took it all, as well as the bride's jewelry. The father-in-law was all right, but he had no say. But the mother-in-law was cruel. Every day after the father and son went to work, she treated the new bride with brutality. She had to clean, wash, cook, and lipe the floor. If the mother-in-law wasn't satisfied, she beat the daughter-in-law. Sometimes she wasn't given food. She bore it all and said nothing to her husband and father-in-law. But this did not make things better. The old lady was always plotting to get rid of her. That's the extract. I now want to shift to another house, the father-in-law house. In Indian literature, the father-in-law house has a double meaning. It is a euphemism for jail, the place where you are cared for and have no expenses. Food and clothing are free, but you have to observe the father-in-law rule, obey instruction, and your movements are restricted. Here's a celebrated short story by the Indian Nobel Prize winner Rabindranath Tagore called The Kabuliwala, which tells of a little girl who befriends a fruit seller. When he's arrested by the police for beating a man who owes him money, he tells the little girl that he's going to his father-in-law's house. Staying on that Indian theme, I recall a popular song from an old Indian film, I.S. Johar and Mehmood in Goa, where two prisoners are being taken to jail and they sing. Well, you know me, I like to get a chance to sing. ये दो दीवाना दिल के चले हैं देखो मिलके ये दो दीवाना दिल के चले हैं मेरे मिलके चले हैं ससुराल चले हैं Chili, hey, sasural. Meaning, we are two kind of crazy men going to our father-in-law's house. As for me, being confined to a hospital ward did feel a bit like jail, although the food, accommodation, and the medication, they were far from free. Two incidents stood out for me while at the hospital. One was when my granddaughter Jaylee, age 5, came to visit. Yeah, that's a name for me, she said. You are not well. Do you want me to read you a story? And she did for a full 4 minutes. In another instance, the night before I was to be discharged from the hospital, there was a critical admission. I was in the room that had many of the emergency equipment. I was asked to relocate to another room, which I did. It was only in the morning when I saw the sign on the door that I realized that I had been moved to the delivery room. I want to say that I'm feeling much better. I'll be having surgery in about a week's time, and my doctors assured me that I will be okay. So I want to thank you for listening to my reflection, even as I strayed from the independence team. Thank you.
That's
That
lovely.
was
Lovely.
wonderful, Motilal.
Thank you.
I don't even know if I need to ask if there are comments. Any comments?
Absolutely wonderful.
You know, while I
Um,
was sick, I wasn't writing, so this is one when I was getting better.
yeah. Yes, and it is it's quite interesting. You're capturing, the some of the Hindu traditions. Often we see, and you alluded to it, the television soaps that,
Indeed.
yeah, always show that the daughter-in-law is treated as, the lowest rung on the ladder. And as a matter of fact, I think a lot of people think that that's the norm based on, what the media showcases and what have you. And they believe that's how it is. And from the moment I grew up hearing that as well, I went to a Hindu school. My primary school was a Hindu school, Five Rivers Hindu, the Sanatan Dharma. And you grew up hearing that, well, when she goes into that house, she's going to be treated a certain way. And that's so I grew up with the stories of the daughter-in-law being considered the low, the one to serve all of the individuals when she goes into this home, and I'm kind of glad that you demonstrated that many of the deities in Hinduism are females, and they actually have very prominent roles in the lives of individuals, and so yeah, very interesting reflections, Mutilan, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vishnu, you have a comment?
Well, I'm muted, unmuted. Okay. What I was saying while he was reading, and I have a little concern about some of these stories. It's the same way that I would think that people like Michael Anthony, like Selvon, like Naipo, like Lovelace, we all keep writing about poor people, poor people, poor people. And nobody writes about the middle class. To me, those stories, those earlier stories by these popular writers fit into a period. As Cynthia was saying, we are developing. Why is not anybody writing about the middle class? In the same way, Motilal and the piece that's read in, those are periods. Last speaker, Natasha, when she says that we seem to think that's a norm. That's how they behave all the time. But daughter-in-law hardly ever live with the mother-in-laws again. I mean, as far as I know. Because as soon as the son gets married, he moves out. They move out. So those stories are period stories. In my view, they are period stories. They capture a period in which things were so. I'm not quite sure if the things are still so. But because they are put into books and we read them all the time, we think, oh yeah, that's how they behave. Vishnu's wife is home here and his wife gives her, daughter-in-law home, and the mother-in-law gives it good to her. Poor daughter-in-law doesn't live home again. So we have to be sometimes a little careful about how we quote, Even quoting Rabindranath Tagore writing so many, well, not centuries, decades gone by, in his time. Even when I grew up, ago, it's no longer so. But we writers don't put a period, a date to we are writing. But readers interpret the stories and say, that is so, that is so, I know it's so, it is not so. It has changed. As I'm saying, son-in-laws no longer live with their mother-in-laws, and daughter-in-laws no longer live Chakal, as we will say. So that's my concern about some of these stories. I do write about them. Because when I grew up, they were so. Nowadays, they're not so. But yes, they do capture a very strong period when the mother-in-law was very dominant and the daughter-in-law was basically a slave in the house. And that is true, Motilal. Very true. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Well, I have a friend that got married in 2010, and she lives with her mother-in-law her in-laws, she moved in. And they treat her well. They treat her nice. But so it still happens to a degree. I think a lot of it depends on finances and situations and how young people are when they get married. So
Well, I think one of the things, Gersha, too, when he mentioned about writing about the middle class, I grew up in a middle class Trinidad home, which was basically a white colonial home, with some rather interesting and rather peculiar qualities in it. And it's an interesting thing because as a Trini, a few years ago, a woman, because I don't sound like a Trini because I've spent so much time in the States and did so much theater, but she said, well, you don't look like a Trini looking through the paper. And I said, well, if you go back before independence, that's when I look like a Trini because most of the photos in those old Guardian papers were of white people. And it changed completely when we got independence. Thank goodness, because it showed a more fulsome quality about the different peoples here and the different statuses in income. So yeah, and I've written about that in one of my books. So yeah, but it's rare. It's very rare, unfortunately.
which book? Harold, which book did you write about it in?
Well, it's in my autobiographical book, Punky Doodles,
Okay.
telling about how I grew up in Woodbrook and what happened there. And of course, this was during World War II, of course, as well. And of course, that made a huge difference, because we had all these servicemen coming from all over the world, changing in many ways Trinidad culture. And much of our culture today is still very much changed because of that war. And when we go back to Eric Williams, this may be heretical to say, but I really think in many ways he threw out the baby with the bathwater because he threw out a lot that was good that he shouldn't have thrown away. But we do, we have so much here that is of so many different levels of culture. It isn't just poor people, and thank goodness, or we wouldn't be here at all.
I agree. I feel though that I don't know, for me as a writer, I write what I see. Maybe I don't know a lot of rich people, but I write what I see, I write what I know.
Yes.
And I feel like I always say, like, if Trinidad wants to be portrayed well, she should behave better.
Yes.
And I don't know if I came from a middle class home or not. My father was in the army. My mother was, before she had kids, she worked with the Red Cross. And then when she was home, she was a seamstress. So because she couldn't work anymore. My aunt was a teacher. Her husband was a carpenter and he also taught shop. So that's the back. I grew up in Diamond Vale, and that's the background I come from. But I feel like the people that I write about and the things that I write about reflect what I see.
Yes.
And I feel that the middle class, and because I know people from that sector, the middle class and the upper middle class in Trinidad tend to remain in pockets. So they have their own little pocket.
Yes,
From
that's
A
very
to
true.
B, and that's it. So
That's
like
very true.
if you're taking a maxi or you're traveling in taxis and you're not in their little associations and interact, you may not see that. So for me, that's what represents my writing. But speaking of books, Vishnu, I know that you have your book out. Congratulations.
Yeah.
On
Yes.
and I got the message for your launch, so I'll be emailing that to everyone soon. Congratulations. You want to tell us a bit about your book and is it with middle class? Give us a little this.
No, my book is not about the middle class. Not at all. I started writing the book about 5 years ago. But I had to research the book. And it's somewhat, there are elements of autobiography in the book. So it means I have to go to my brothers and sisters and ask them, the older ones, and how we live and how we grow. And I have to go back to Esperanza and talk about people who live in Esperanza before me and during my time. It is and I took some of the atrocities that went on in the cane field and how women were brutally taken care of. They were really massacred in the fields. And I used that as a takeoff point to about the ills of the sugarcane industry. The main character is a woman. And I mean, I am just talking as a writer, and I could say I was trying to portray, in a sense, a woman in a man's world. That's what it is. And how she was able to fight the system and take care of so many children, which could have been my family or could have been any other family in the sugar industry. It was tough going, but it was going. But the fact that she never gave up, and that was the strength of the individual. The woman who had to, as Motilal will say, work and cook and wash and all that, they'll come back home in the evening and see about her kids and her husband. That was a strong woman. And that was the kind of woman I recognized and I see living with me in Esperanza, in County Limited, in Gordon Sugar Estates. I no longer live there. So it gave me sort of distance to leave Esperanza and look back at what took place then. And out of those bits and pieces of research, I carved out a story. It may not be representative of the sugar industry, but it's how I saw it.
But it's a version. It's a version, and that plays in a lot of and that's why I say I talk about my job as being Hogwarts, because I don't know if you're familiar with the Harry Potter books. It's a castle that's always changing, like the stairs are always changing and stuff. So it may be a version of somebody's story. May not be everybody's story, but it's somebody's story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your launch is coming up on what date?
On the 14th of September at 5 o'clock at Diwali Nagar.
Lovely.
Nice. Very nice.
Lovely, thank you. All right, if there are any other comments on Mutilal's piece? I love Mutilal's writing because he
Yes.
always makes me laugh, and I love to hear him sing.
Right.
So,
So my
Yeah.
comment was a very brief one. It's a reflective piece, Vish. So I know to judge it as a short story might be a bit unfair. A reflective piece that he said he wrote about while he was in hospital. Um, Comical, as Gersha was now saying, comical. But I like the plea he was making in the piece. It's a comical piece, but it's a very serious plea he's making for a balance to be given to the woman, balance to be given to the daughter-in-law. Given the place the feminine principle has in Hinduism, as he talked about the religion, and given the inequality of the treatment meted out to the son-in-law as opposed to the daughter-in-law. I don't know, Fish, how much inequality still exists. Whatever class we're talking about, how much inequality exists in the treatment given to the son-in-law. And you could talk about the Indo-Trinidadian as opposed to the daughter-in-law. That is something I don't know about, right? But if you want to talk about that,
You see, sometimes what
there's inequality.
up in the books may not translate into action in the house. You will read something ideally that is supposed to be a Lakshmi and whatnot. But when it comes to basic things,
Yes, correct. Correct. Yeah, you wouldn't see Lakshmi, you wouldn't see Saraswati, or
but it's good. Those stories capture a period,
yeah.
or to know what that period is.
Yeah.
Evolving. My only concern is that sometimes we read in those books and we think it still happens then. I mean, the discriminating reader will not think so. But whenever you say, oh, that's how they behave. But things have changed because the educated daughter-in-law will not be suppressed by the mother-in-law. She will
Correct.
move on.
Correct. But I was thinking in terms of inheritance, how that is shared. If it's moving towards equality, or if there's still that big sense of inequality.
It's very simple. Whatever the son-in-law, whatever the son gets, the daughter-in-law gets.
Well, all right.
Work so.
Yeah.
It's by law, but it doesn't always work like that. And it could be a never.
Gush. Gush. That's it for me.
Yeah, that's
all
it.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to comment?
Well, Gersha, you just mentioned Harry Potter a while back, but one of the interesting things is when we're talking about class structures and all of that, people don't realize, even though it's a fantasy group of books, but the main theme throughout is class structures and bigotry and prejudices against people who are different and people who are not purebred, so-called. Very serious themes that we can apply to real life as well. And of course, that's one of the reasons why those books are so popular. They're not just fun reading. They really have a lesson to tell, which is very interesting.
I've just finished Half-Blood Prince again, so I'll be sleeping to Deathly Hallows tonight. I fall asleep listening to Harry Potter. Before then it was The Hobbit. I noticed that with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings as well, the class structure.
Yes, yes.
That was quite heavily. I don't think it was the author's intent, but
well, the Hobbit, of course, basically was written as a children's book, but like so many great children's books, it's multi-layered.
Mhm.
when adults can actually read it and say, oh, this isn't quite what it seems, is it?
Yeah.
The same is true with Kenneth Graham's Wind in the Willows, another children's book, which is all about anthropomorphized animals, basically standing in for British gentlemen of various classes and what happens during the clashes and how they cooperate. It's all very interesting how these things are put together for children, mind you.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Anybody else would like to comment? If not, I would like to move along. We have Alicia Lawrence, and forgive me, you'll have to tell me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Yuuru? Yuhuru?
Uhuru.
Yuhuru.
Yeah, it's a Swahili word that means freedom. So when we were looking at the whole issue of independence, this piece looks at the whole issue of oftentimes persons sort of look at independence as freedom. And the words sometimes are used interchangeably. Forgive me for not putting on my camera. The laptop is acting up, so I'm using my phone. And so Uhuru actually was a piece that came out from, I have a friend who actually named his son Uhuru. And when we think of independence, a lot of times when you hear people say, I want to be independent or whatever, they usually see it as something as being free from this. And, I don't have to listen to this individual anymore. I don't have to obey, And so even for us, independence meant that we were free from colonial rule. And the England being the mother country at the time, we would have been severing, as it was, our ties from the skirt of our mother, so to speak. And so this piece has that kind of, it's a short piece, I'm going to read it. Uhuru, freedom, liberté, libertad. The language may be different, but the essence is the same. To say the word with lavish, to experience the name. Uhuru, freedom, I say. Free from the shackles of modern day, free to be me, free to be you, without a thought of what demons to pay. Liberty, I will rather be free than live with the mental chains of fear. Give me liberty or give me death, for the emotional turmoil is too much to bear. Freedom, the ultimate goal, to feel free in spirit, body, and soul, soaring into the clouds, daydreaming of life, not fighting to experience a part of the fold. Men behind bars long for it. Women in abusive relationships want a way out. Children believe adulthood brings it, only to realize it's not what adult life's about. True freedom comes with responsibility. It brings a sense of well-being. It starts in the heart and grows outward, encompassing all with an unselfish feeling. Freedom, liberty, libertad, liberty. It's yours, my friend, and it's mine. Grasp it, embrace it, share it, and experience it. And it's sure to produce a feeling greater than wine. Uhuru.
Lovely piece. Thank you for sharing. Any comments?
Yeah, Alicia, that allusion, give me liberty or give me death. That's an allusion to whom, girl? Remind me.
Oh, his name slips me as well, but yes, but I know
Give me,
of whom you
yeah,
speak.
give me liberty or give me death. Somebody.
Yes, yes,
Well,
yes, you're correct.
it comes from a statement by one of the people who were fighting the American Revolution against the British.
Patrick Henry?
That's right.
Right, correct.
That's the guy.
Okay. Right, thanks. Well, I like your use of the liberty, that is accent, TE acute, and libertad, and then liberty. Is that correct,
Liberté
Alicia?
and
Yes,
liberté.
you
Yes,
are. It's French, it's
yes.
Spanish, and it's English.
Liberté,
You're correct. You're correct.
libertad, liberty. I
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, I like that use of the word.
yeah. You're correct.
Okay. If there are no other comments, we'll move along to Heather. Alicia, thank you so much for sharing. I enjoyed your piece.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I
Sorry, Heather, let me introduce you. We'll move along to Heather. Heather Ferguson is reading Concerto de
Cariani.
Cariani.
It's the Amerindian name for Trinidad. So and I have a different slant on this independence thing, but anyway, a little bit of a history lesson like Cynthia as well. From the time Christopher Columbus came across Trinidad in 1498 in his search for India, he may have needed a woman to steer him in the right direction. Trinidad has been occupied by a parade of invaders, with Spain leading the way. France, among other European nations, settled in to take charge of land interests, developing plantations to avail themselves of the riches by making use of the island's vast resources. In 1797, when the British wrested the island away from the Spanish, they contributed to the changing face of the island's population by bringing slaves from Africa to work on the plantations. With the abolition of slavery came the Indians from India as indentured servants. Canadian came as missionaries. Chinese and Corsicans, Syrians and Lebanese came as merchants. Jews fled Europe during the World Wars, and the Americans set up bases on the island during World War II, all contributing to the unique mix of peoples who today inhabit our twin islands. Our collective DNA is a blend of ethnicities and cultures, resulting in a people apart from any other nation in the world. Independence Day, August 31st, 1962, did not just free us from the political ties of the British Empire. It put an end to a long history of colonists dating well into prehistory when the Amerindian tribes from South America visited the island and used it as a ceremonial retreat and burial site. At last, free to chart our own course in the future history of our nation with independence, the remnants of every country that colonized Trinidad and Tobago still remains in place names, buildings, customs woven into the culture of our island and the DNA of our people. Many of us are not of pure blood. We are an intricate mix of elements that reflect the scope and range of the variety of humankind that graced our shores. We are a human Palau. My poem, Concierto de Siriani, speaks to our first colonizer, Spain, since the very name of our island is one bequeathed to us by Christopher Columbus, illustrating how the flavor of Spanish culture wove its way into everyday life of our beloved nation through history, place names, music, and that unmistakable layer of genetic makeup. And especially as now we are considering the removal of the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria from our coat of arms. We cannot change history, however. It is those very ships that brought the world to our shores and paved the way for all of us, unless we are of Amerindian descent, to call this island home. Keep the ships, I say, but add the steel pan. We may try to eradicate the outward signs of colonialism, but we carry our history in our very genetic makeup. In my poem, I first refer to Trinidad by its Amerindian name, Seriani, in a time before colonization. Then I go on to feature Spain as a major influencer in our history into the present day. But the same can be said of any other ethnicity that now calls Trinidad and Tobago home. Here is my poem. All over Siriani, Spain left its mark, from the trinity of peaks beheld at first view to the sheltered harbor of Port of Spain, this green island branded for eternity. All over Trinidad, Spain left its mark, in Palo Seco, San Juan, in Aranguez too. the distant hills of Alhambra finding its twin image in Sierra del Aripo. The music survives too, in the people, in the blood coursing through the veins, the rhythm, the beat, through Parang, the steel pan's voice, in the haunting melodies of a distant concierto. In Arangues, the women, their sweeping skirts have music in every fold. The sway of their hips, the thrust of their breasts echo melodies of old. Joaquim Rodrigo's Concierto de Arangues finds its home in the bold cheekbones and smooth brows of the hauntingly beautiful, girls whose innocence and longing presents the ultimate lure. So, a virgin Eden, Cariani cast her own allure for Spain to vanquish. Today, a mosaic of people, Spain in their DNA, stand with all the place names. They are all that is left on this land of that distant conqueror. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. I love how your work is always so layered. You go back and you have to reread it. Like if I were just to come across that without the introduction, it was just to come across the piece. Certainly
Mhm.
would have to read a couple times, or you'd have to go Google, what is this? What island is she talking about?
Well, actually, that's why I did a little preamble
And
to
I
it. But
enjoy that.
the whole thing is on my Facebook page if you want to go
Mhm.
back to it.
No, I enjoy it. I
Yeah.
think I should put that on the blog as well too.
Okay.
Alrighty. Any comments?
I just want to say ditto to what you have said. Wonderful, and I'm certainly going to be rereading it and poring over it. A beautiful bit of work, Heather.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is.
Yes. And I tried to say the comment that you made about the steel pan and the ships on our emblem. I wonder if anybody here actually thought of simply adding the steel pan and keeping the ships, because I think that's a wonderful idea.
Well, you know that little ship's wheel at the top? You could just
Yes,
put the steel pan there instead, you know?
yes, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, and a good suggestion.
I better let Gillian Bishop know I'm in touch with her.
Oh, yes. I forget though. Was it Caroline Chang that
Yes,
designs?
Carlisle Shan
Yeah.
was one of the artists, maybe the main artist. I think there was a committee.
You see, the pan was in its, it was young yet when this, when independence had happened. It wasn't even in the schools yet. But, now we've recognized its importance. So I think, yes, it deserves to be on there, but not at the cost of anything else. I mean, the ships and the ship's wheel are kind of redundant. So take the ship's wheel out.
Yes. But as I said, you can't erase history.
Right.
Yeah, and
I think that's my thing is the cost of.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and not only that, you have I like it, Heather. I think you would have captured, the history from Christopher Columbus coming to the present day,
Yeah. In
and
a different way, it's kind of like what Cynthia did. Yeah.
yes,
With
yes,
yeah.
yeah, and so I really like the way that both would have been juxtaposed. What you have as well coming out from that is our 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 history is rich, and it is made
Yes.
up of a multiplicity of different individuals. You have the Spanish, the French, the English, the Dutch, everybody, and as you said it, we are a human pillow.
Yeah. You
And
know, the word Dogla only exists in Trinidad. You say
yes,
Dogla in
correct.
Canada, nobody knows what you're talking about,
Right.
for example.
So yeah, so you have that nice potpourri. And I think it all contributes to who we are today.
Yes.
And so sometimes, this whole issue of tearing down monuments and removing these things, our history is rich, and all of these things tell us of where we would have come from. I don't think that it really glamorizes our colonial masters or the persons who would have, been very horrible to who they would have met here. But I think it showcases the fact that this is what our history is about, and this is where we would have come from. And I think both are important, so that
Yes.
and so even touching, and I like the fact that you touched on it. So it made me say, I said, well, I'm like, she write this last night. You know,
You know,
so even touching on the whole issue of the pan being included,
Right.
it is really just embracing who we are to have it included in you know, in this emblem of our of who we are. But at the same time, it should not be to the sacrifice of reminding us of where we came from. And as he said, Harold, I think rightly said, you cannot erase history. History is what it is.
yes, one of the things to keep in mind too is that the names of the streets in Woodbrook, each street is named after a British general from the Boer War.
Correct, correct.
You know,
Correct.
so what are you going to do? Change all the names of these streets? You know, it's ridiculous.
Oh, who was it? Somebody said that Dogla exists in Guyana as well.
Alana. Welcome, Alana, June, and Willard. Please feel free to jump in at any time if you have a comment or an opinion on the coat of arms being changed.
Well, I'd be interested to hear what Krishna has to say.
Your piece, Heather.
Yeah.
Yes, I enjoyed it. Where you say we have a long history of colonization. So you are saying we didn't get independence from the British only, right?
Yeah.
So we can't be saying that, or perhaps we shouldn't be saying that, because there's a number of colonizers. Well, it's Spain and France mainly, right?
Yeah.
Spain, France, and the British. So those three. So then my question would be, well, so if we say if we independent, Heather, that's the question I have for you. What is independence then?
Well,
because that's the orientation you took.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct?
I have to question what is independence.
All right.
And that's subtly in the piece is what I'm doing.
Sorry.
Because
Yeah.
how independent
Yes.
are we
Good,
if we carry
good.
it in our DNA?
Right. So I got it.
Yeah.
And just a little aside on the idea of the Dogla. Well, you know, there's the Democratic nominee for US is a Dogla.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
People don't call her Dogla, they call her black. But
yeah.
we don't call
She's
Douglas black. But
Jamaican,
we don't call
though.
Douglas black here. Correct, in Trinidad. We won't say as a black person you get married to. You say you get married to a Douglas.
Yeah.
I just throw in some mischievous things here now. All right.
Well, the trainees I know in Canada already say, well, you know, we're gonna have a little Douglas girl in the White House. They already say that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's because if she was Trinidadian, I think that would be more of a thing, but because her father was Jamaican.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one of the things, this is apropos of absolutely nothing, but the title of your piece reminds me of a piece of music, and I would like to recommend it for anyone who's interested. And it's the Concierto de Aranjuez by Rodrigo.
Well, I do talk about that. I think you left the room when I was saying Joaquim Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez finds its home in the bold cheekbones and smooth brows of the hauntingly beautiful women.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite pieces of music. Yes. And there's an Aranjuez in Spain that was his inspiration, and we have Aranjuez in Trinidad.
Yes.
Yeah.
That piece of music means a great deal to me because many years ago when I was doing a piece of writing and I was stuck, literally stuck. And I was driving one weekend, this was when I was in the States, from Santa Barbara, California down to Los Angeles. And this piece came on the radio. And all of a sudden, my writing block just exploded. It's a really tremendous piece of music.
It's a very moving piece of music, yes. Well, thank you all for your comments.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you, everyone. We're going to close. Well, before we do, I have my piece, and then I'll open the meeting for a bit of an open mic if anyone wanted to share but didn't get a chance to email and get on the listing. All right, so my piece is very short, and it was, I was thinking of the change of the coat of arms and everything about independence as well. It's just, as I think this seems to be the theme for the meeting, questioning independence. What is independence? So here's my piece. Independence Day. Independence is a river, not a puddle you leap over and look back once a year to when. It is a reclaiming of the ever-evolving nation of selves, defining what is a Trinbagonian. And that's it.
Uh-huh.
Any comments?
Nice.
Very
nice.
captivating.
It was so good. I wanted more.
Ah, yes, yes,
I
yes,
didn't,
yes.
I wrote more, but then I scratched out some because I felt like I didn't want it to be preachy. And I was kind of going into that kind of tangent, you know? So
I think you captured it though. I
thanks.
think you captured it in a nutshell. It's not just a puddle. I mean, it's the river, something that's ongoing. And we are,
That's right.
we are metamorphosing, whatever you want to call that word. As time goes by, we change, we grow, we are flowing. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say about a river? You
Can't
cannot
step in
cross
it
the
twice.
same river twice.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that should um that
That's
should
true
capture
because
that
like
feeling.
even Trinidad is not the Trinidad my parents revered. It's a very different Trinidad for me. My Trinidad and my parents' Trinidad are completely different. So
Well, mine too, Gersha. Mine too, very much so.
Yeah, I think we can all see it. Yeah, you're correct. Very correct.
yeah. And then when I was writing it too, I kept thinking of like, are we really independent? That song, oh my God. Okay, so I'm gonna give away my age. I don't know if you guys remember In Vogue. Yeah, I think it was In Vogue. You have to free your mind. And I kept thinking of us in terms of how much of Trinidad is Trinidad and how much of Trinidad is still impacted by the Americans and, the British and the Canadians. How
Well, I
much of
find that
Trinidad is,
your piece is a good companion to my piece that way because we're asking the same question. We're making the same statement in a way. What is
yeah,
independence? And we're all part of whatever regime we came under.
yeah,
You know,
because when you guys went back in the history and they were talking about the crime and stuff, one of the things that I always think about is when cable TV and well, first it wasn't cable, it was satellite. And then we got cable after that. After the satellite, we got cable. How much of that impacted our cultural change, because we really started importing American culture.
Well, Gersha, when I had been in Trinidad, I came back again. One of the many times I've come back was in 1957 after I got out of school in the U.S. And that was when Sputnik was just circling the Russian satellite. And I had so many people here calling me, "Oh, hello, there's Sputnik," because I had just come from the U.S. And I thought, what the hell are they talking about? They said, "Oh, no, that's the satellite that's going around," And I was Sputnik.
Okay. Alrighty, if there are no other comments, I'm gonna go ahead and I can always, of course, I'll do this by vote. If you'd like to end the recording, if anyone wants to share something that they didn't want to be recorded or they brought work to share for feedback. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording if it's okay with everyone.
Just give me a minute or two
Sure.
before you do. Right, so I found this piece here. See if you could identify it. Forged from the love of liberty in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare, side by side we stand, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea. This our native land. We pledge our lives to thee. Here every creed and race finds an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Here every creed and race finds an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Now, Walcott has taken issue with this. You say, well, you know, Pat Castagna wrote this for the Federation.
Federation.
The anthem,
Correct.
he submitted it as this for the Federation.
Correct.
It was not chosen. I don't know what they chose for the Federation. But
No, the Federation ended.
They didn't choose any because from the moment
1
Jamaica
from
pulled
10
out.
equals 0.
Yeah, all right.
That's right. And that's
Yeah.
how we got the
Federation
famous
ended.
statement. Correct. 1 from
But
10.
we didn't have Federation
zero.
for
1
about
from 10
4 years,
equals
So
3
0.
years.
So they didn't know.
Yeah,
They didn't have it at all. It didn't materialize really.
All right.
Yeah.
So when Jamaica pulled out and Dr. Williams made the famous mathematical equation where he says 1 from 10 leaves
None.
no, correct? 1 from 10 leaves no.
equals 0.
0, right. So we come out in 1962 now. So Pat Castagna, they had the competition now for an anthem for Trinidad and Tobago. Pat Castagna take the same song, okay, an anthem, and he tweeted it a little, and you know, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea. That's the Caribbean, but it has to refer now to Trinidad and Tobago. This our native land. This our native land. We pledge our lives. Yeah. And then Walcott took issue with the fine, also on the fine and fine. Some people, grammarians. I mean, Cynthia, you might have your quarrel with this too. Should it be fined or fines? Here, every creed and race fines. I say fines, right? Some people say fine.
Because I take it as a subjunctive.
Some people say.
And I say poetic license because it is poetic license. Right. Yes, and it's what he wanted.
Some people say maybe he was saying here every creed and race. I hope here every creed and race. No, me every creed and race find an equal place here. That's what some people said that. He was thinking that.
But
I say fines. I use the distributive. What is it? The distributive adjective. Here every creed and every race finds an equal place. So we could quarrel about it, and we want to change this too. We might want to change this too. Forged from the love of liberty, the metaphor of the furnace forged, and then the fires of hope and prayer. I didn't go down too well with me, you know, when I started to look at it. You know, fire of hope and fire of prayer in the furnace, and the love of liberty.
Well, it is through crucibles that we become. It is through crucibles that we become strong, and so we would have probably. I think the whole genesis behind it is the fact that here we had a number of islands that would have, one for a better word, fought for their independence, fought for their freedom.
Well, the whole analogy is the blacksmith making something of beauty from a old piece of iron.
Correct.
I know this probably dates me, but for me, the anthem of Trinidad and Tobago is what Belafonte sang. Island in the
Islands in the Sun.
Island in the Sun. Yeah, you know, beautiful lyrics, beautiful tune, and I've always thought of it as our anthem here, even though I know it's not. But it's an absolutely gorgeous song.
Krishna, I just wanted to comment though.
Yeah,
What
sure.
you read really identifies, I think it reflects our regional policy with the other Caribbean islands. I feel it's fitting that that came from there and became our anthem because that's really how we view the Caribbean as one. And you see that in our policies and in our aids and our initiatives throughout.
Yeah, right, just side by side we stand, islands of the Blue Caribbean Sea.
Yeah, you see it in the
That
policies. Well, in governmental policies, most, I don't know, I'm not a historian, but from what I can gather, we have a strong policy towards Caribbean being viewed as one through CARICOM or whatever else. You know, it's always Trinidad will think of everybody else.
Yes,
So
Gosha,
I
but
think it's fitting.
in the same breath, right? Some people recognize the Maduro government and some don't. So this oneness you're talking about, I think that still to be achieved.
Yeah,
Let's just have
that's
little example, that
that's
current.
true, but we're still willing to stand loans and things for the rest of the Caribbean. So I feel like that plays in as well. You know, how we
Again,
still.
it's just like the independence we talk about, what we would like it to be
Mhm.
and what it is in reality.
Alana said, excellent point, Mutilal.
Thanks, Alana.
Any comments?
This has been a very fine meeting, Gersha.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone that contributed to make it
many
so.
profound thoughts here.
Okay, so I'm gonna open the floor for anyone that hasn't spoken as yet and would just like to give some feedback. It could be on the meeting as a whole or one piece that stood out to you. June,
Yes, please. Good evening.
welcome. Good evening.
I want to say that I enlarged my history of Trinidad and Tobago this afternoon, and I was want to wish you many more anniversaries of independence. We are a little behind, but we are still one people, even although we are separated by the sea. We have similar values and goals, and we hope that as time goes by, even although unity might not be as our forefathers envisioned it, that together we can achieve, because there are ways in which we can get together and keep out what has to be kept out. I wouldn't elaborate on that for obvious reasons, but thank you very much, and God bless you in the new year. All the best.
Thank you, June. That was quite lovely. Anyone else would like to comment or share, give their thoughts?
Willard, we are here from you yet, Willard G. You there?
I know he was having some audio issues earlier, so. All righty. Well, Willard, June, Alana, Cynthia, Alicia, Krishna, Harold, Vishnu, Heather, Mutilal, thank you so much. Everyone that shared, everyone that contributed. Mutila, I know you wanted to share your piece from last year. Do you still want to share it?
Well, if we have an audience, I have no problem.
All right, so we will close with your piece.
Okay, this one is called Remembering Independence Day. Seems as if I'm just doing a lot of reflections today. In 1962, I was attending the Suchitrace Hindu School. This was a most important year for me. I was scheduled to write the common entrance examination later that year. The second such examination, the first being held in 1961, and which provided places in a government secondary school and did not require the payment of fees. The competition for these places was fierce, and schools in the country areas such as Pinal rarely got more than one or two passes. My school got one pass, and the nearby Pinal government also won. There were two exams, and one had to pass the first to be eligible to write the second. The first was held in May, June, and the final in October, as the school term then, as the school year then started in January. The next important event in that year was independence. This was to be on August 31st, 1962. So, as a student in Standard 5, I was preparing for common entrance and for independence celebration at the same time. We knew of two national anthems at that time. We had been taught to sing the British national anthem, God Save the Queen. And I think because we were a Hindu school, the Indian national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, which was sung in Hindi, and of which we did not know the meaning. Suddenly, we had to learn a new anthem, forged from the love of liberty. Normally at morning assembly, we'd sing a few bhajans in Hindi before we said the morning prayer, and even the Indian national anthem before going to our individual classes. Now we sang Forged from the Love of Liberty and other national songs and said the national pledge. Songs such as Our Nation Dawning by Carlton Sampson. Well, I will have to recite it. Come away, hail to the day. This is our land's great morning. Birds in the trees waft to the breeze, songs of a nation's dawning. Hummingbird bright, lend your delight. Ibis your scarlet feathers. Kiskiri calls, summons them all. This is a day of wonders. And we sang, O land of fairest beauty, we pledge our lives to duty, and vow this day, and vow this day, and vow this day to serve thee. And we had to learn how to march. For we are scheduled to join the various schools and scout groups at the Bakal Recreation Ground on the Independence Day Parade. We usually practice on afternoons after lunch because we would be too sweaty to go back in class. With the uneven surface of the Oilton schoolyard and most of us not having shoes, this was a very painful experience until Mr. Maniram, the new common entrance teacher, suggested that we practice on the grassy Bakal recreation ground. Shoulder backwards, chest forwards, left, right, left, right, left, right. He drilled us as our bare feet contacted the green grass. Now, some parents, including my mother, felt that all these extracurricular activities were taking away valuable teaching time from the common entrance students and protested to the principal, Mr. Ramro. A compromise was reached whereby Mr. Maniram gave extra lessons during lunchtime and 1 hour on evening. The government and the Ministry of Education and Culture, as it was then called, planned various activities throughout the country, and celebrations lasted from Thursday, 30th August until Monday, 30th of September that year. In the area where I was living, bordering the St. Patrick and Victoria County Councils. There were school rallies, youth parades, torchlight procession, variety concert, march passes, and fireworks display in nearly every village that had a recreation ground. Of particular interest to Mr. Parry and Mr. Birbal, the village good-for-nothing drunks, were the dinner and entertainment programs for the aged and the poor that was held at the many community centers and civic halls. These guys moved from village to village for 5 days, having their fill of free food. School treats, we used to call them sweet and cake time, were held once a year at the end of the term before Christmas. It was a special time for poor rural school children who sang Christmas songs and put on little skits as they proceeded on school vacation, with some of the older students who were leaving primary school saying goodbye to one another. That first independence, we were all treated and received special gifts to mark the occasion. A pencil and a notebook with the coat of arms labeled with the date of independence, a gold-plated token, and a coin commemorating our independence. And we also got a handheld new Trinidad and Tobago flag. In addition to the regular cake and sweet drink, we also receive a chocolate wrapped in shiny paper resembling a large coin. Independence Day saw the first independence sports being held at the Bakal Recreation Ground, and which continues to this day. After the sports meeting, we were treated to steel pan music and limbo by a band known as the Raymond Family Steel Orchestra. They received lukewarm applause when they played the newly composed independence song, which the crowd hardly knew. However, when they played the 1960 road march, Sparrows, making love one day to a girl named Mimi, they had everyone jumping. And I don't tell my friends and my family not to worry. And if you have any mail, please send them to me at the Royal Jail. And also they played Blakey's Maria. Maria, girl, I love you so bad. If you leave me now, we go be so sad. But she catch me sweet. What she give me to rub is what I eat. However, when they shifted to the Indian songs like Ay, 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 Suku, Suku, and Mere Sona, Re Sona, Re Sona, the crowd went wild. Later in the night, we were treated to a fireworks display, which was the most amazing thing I had ever seen. 1962 was a great year for me. I saw a steel band live for the first time. I saw limbo dancing for the first time. I saw fireworks for the first time. The first Independence Day sport was held in my village. I also passed my common entrance for the Modsec school in San Fernando. Yes, that independence year was a most memorable one for me. Thank you.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Motilal.
Yes, wonderful.
Lovely. I believe that is a great way to end the meeting. So
Yep.
I would like to thank everyone that attended, everyone that shared, everyone that commented. And with that, we're going to close the meeting. Happy Independence Day. I hope everyone recovered from all the partying they did yesterday.
Yes. Plenty whiskey flowed.
All right then.